This is Sibo, or small intestinal bacteria overgrowth. This is the small intestine and this is the large intestine. It's primarily used to absorb our food. They diagnose this, you come into the doctor, you have symptoms such as like diarrhea, cramping, and they go, okay, we're gonna do a breath test. They do this test, and if the numbers come back right, then they say, okay, you have Sibo. It's actually caused by a traumatic event. What is something important to my survival that I couldn't absorb? This is a flat growth right here that helps aid with nutrient absorption. When we're conflict active, I couldn't absorb that boy, that girl, that money, the house, something you couldn't absorb, that job, that promotion. The amount of cell growth that happens depends on how intense you experience the conflict, and bacteria are going to grow with these cells. A lot of people will take this breath test and they'll test high, but they won't have symptoms. That's because the symptoms don't start until the conflict gets resolved, and the body no longer needs these high maintenance cells, and it starts to get rid of them, and then that's when you get symptoms. A brilliant German doctor, he could look at your brain CT scan, and everybody with Sibo, they would have rings in their brain here or here. And these rings would change. If it was conflict active, they'd be sharp rings and the person wouldn't have any noticeable symptoms. If the person had washed out rings, they would start to have symptoms. And now Sibo becomes chronic when the person can't resolve the conflict and it's constantly on, off, on, off, on, off. I had Sibo. So this is the steps to get better, and I go over it in much more detail in my free webinar that shows you my 13-day protocol. There is a thought rattling around in your head. There's an old memory, traumatic memory, rumbling around in your head that we need to first identify. So the treatment is we need to identify this traumatic event that put your gun to overdrive. And then we need to identify the PTSD triggers. And I go over this in much more detail in my free webinar. Is everything that somebody would have told me when my symptoms started. You don't want to start blaming food. You don't want to start doing all these crazy supplements and stuff like that. The first step is to watch my webinar, but it's find the conflict shock. This is the treatment. Don't tell you I didn't tell you. Find the PTSD triggers. This is a process. Get out paper, start writing this. Like what happens when I go to the bathroom? What was I doing? How does this a reminder of the traumatic event that put my gun to overdrive? And a lot of the times just seeing this connection will like literally cut your symptoms in half. Maybe about 25% of the time, somebody has to take some actions to further resolve the conflict that's going off and on in their life. This is the best tool. This tool right here helps you find these memories and change them.